Okay, so my name's Thea. I've been a 1+2 Development Officer for about the last 4 years. Previously a French teacher at Granton Grammar, so I don't have a nursery or primary background, but I'm quickly gaining it. I've got 2 young children, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, so I've been supporting them through nursery and in my role as Development Officer working with primary teachers. So I train teachers, develop the curriculum for French and also deal with L3 languages. There's a PowerPoint, it's also got copious notes on every slide so that you don't have to take lots of notes if you don't want to, and that will be available to you afterwards. So, let's have a look. Okay, there's the aims of what I hope this PowerPoint will do. Again, a bit like what you had mentioned about replicating. The idea is to give you a project or to talk about how you could teach French in nursery and look at doing transition project through that. Just leave you to read it rather than talk you through it.
Just to say that we'll produce a Google Drive folder which we'll share with everybody, and we'll put all the presentations in that folder so you'll get access to all the presentations.
Okay. So the starting point really was a resource that was in PowerLanguage, that was produced, that was in the responsive resources section, which was a mini beasts for early years, not particularly for nursery, but that was sort of the starting point of where this project sort of came from, if you like. So that's the background. So before we go any further, I'd like you to grab a Post-it note. There are some Post-its on your table, and I'd like you to write down one word linked with nursery, transition to P1 or P1. Any word that just springs to mind, write it down. First word, or a couple if you've got a lot. Everyone got Post-its? If you finish quickly, then you can discuss them on your table. Any word. It doesn't necessarily need to be to do with French. Nursery, transition, P1, P1. You can write a couple, that's fine. Feel free to share them.
Difficult is the word. Enjoying it.
Great, everybody got words? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Merci. So a couple of words from tables. Anybody from this table? Anybody word? Shout them out. Play. Anybody else? Sand. Independence. Good. This table? Play. Good. I like that one. Good.
Talking, listening, enjoying.
Oh, lots of words.
It's a long word.
That's a long word. Anybody else? Fun. Good. This table?
Is that nerve-wracking?
Nerve-wracking. Is that working nursery level?
For the transition.
For the transition, yeah. Okay, anything else? Nurture. Communication. Okay, good. Well, hold those thoughts in your head and we'll keep those Post-its. We'll come back to them at the end and we'll see if any of those things were in my transition project. So fingers crossed. Right, okay. So let's just set the scene first of all. So transition, doesn't matter what it's at, nursery level or into secondary. These are sort of the 5, if you like, bridges for transition, and taking a sort of theoretical or academic kind of standpoint, just to kind of put it into perspective. There's a link on the title which links you to SILT's website, which is where this comes from. And all these things, administrative, social and personal, curriculum, pedagogical, management of learning, are all things that you probably would naturally have in your head, okay, if you're transitioning children. And that could just be transitioning from one teacher to another teacher, you know, within the primary sector, or from bigger transitions, nursery into P1 or P7 into S1. And those were things that I kind of tried to hold in my head as I was working on this project. Okay, just to set the scene, Granton Nursery up in the Highlands. So we had 27 pupils last year in the class, which was quite large. Previously it had only been 15 or 16. So if you've not been in a nursery recently, does anybody work in early years in nursery? No? Yes? Okay. I would highly recommend that you go in because it's completely different as a secondary school teacher. I was like, wow. So it's really exciting. There's lots of free play in different areas and the children are independent and they just move around. There's a wee area outside where they could play, and then you've got the contrast to the P1 where you've got actual tables and children have to sit in groups. So completely different. So huge transitions there. We actually have a French partner school in Versailles that we paired up with last year, so we wanted to try and include them. Quite a different location, obviously, to the Highlands, and different nursery setup. And although there is no compulsion for French or any language to be in nursery in the 1+2 initiative, and it's not part of the experiences and outcomes, there's no experience and outcomes for the early years for languages, there are the 1+2 expected outcomes for P1 to 7. So by the end of P1, this is what we're expecting pupils to be able to do. So in working with the nursery, I just bear that in mind. Now that's my sort of benchmark. Obviously P1's quite far down the line, but early years is the 2 years of nursery and P1. It's that whole 3-year period, okay? Okay, French in nursery. Those of you that were at the conference last year, you might have seen me, a little video that was presented, I believe, that I created. And I talked about the French nursery programme that I created with PowerLanguage a couple of years ago now. So I've been teaching French in my local nursery for the last 4 years, so kind of lots of experimentation. So everything that is on the PowerLanguage are things that have been done in the class, if you like. So there are 4 blocks and there are 4 planners. So this is an example planner. You can find them all in the PowerLanguage nursery tab.
In the planner section. In
the planner section. So if you roll over PL School 1, you'll see nursery pops up, and then you click on nursery and there are 4 blocks, block 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's enough in there for 2 years of nursery. And each one has a topic, like getting to know you for a term, loads of activities. So things that you could do so that early years practitioners had ideas linked to resources. So in green are the resources that are available. And there's little video clips of me if you want to see it in action. And then linked to Curriculum for Excellence. So it was all planning's done for you. Here are the 4 blocks. Roughly, these were the topics that we thought would be perhaps appropriate, that would link into going into the P1 programme, and were things that maybe the children would be doing anyway within nursery. Okay. I, over the last 4 years, have dipped in and out. So like last year, I covered greetings, how are you? We didn't do name, we did basics, yes and no. Block 2, we did colours, numbers and Christmas. Block 3, we missed out days of the week, but we did weather and family, and Easter. And block 4, we did parts of the body. So we just, I just picked out what was relevant with my group of children. Okay, so school-wide transition project. So I was going in every week doing French anyway. I sort of do a 15 to 20 minute session, a bit like book bug sessions, where I do a song to start off with, I introduce some language, a couple of colours, we play a couple games like Kim's game or various things. We read a story, we sing a song, and we do a closing song. So that's the sort of how French looks like in the nursery, depending on how the children are that day. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 15 minutes. Lots of, right, everyone get up, let's run around, Anyway, so that was going on already. The school decided to start up a new transition project last year for the first time, and they were working with the nursery pupils, so 27 of them, playgroup, because we also have a feeder playgroup, P1 and a P1-2 class. So there was about 70 pupils in total that were involved in the project. And it was every Thursday for half a day, and there was a rotation sort of system, if you like. So they had different kind of topics, the children were put into groups, each group had a different teacher, and the children rotated over about 8 weeks through these different topics. And the deputy head teacher put that together and organised all of that. I didn't get involved. I wasn't available to be involved directly with the project because I wasn't available every Thursday. So I did something alongside it. Obviously in the future it would be much better to be integrated within it, but that's maybe for next year. So you can see these were the sorts of things that they did, and as I said, I didn't get involved with it directly. Okay, so my French transition project went alongside it. The children in the nursery were learning about mini beasts. That's what they decided they wanted to focus on, because it's very much student-led, where the learning comes out of the pupils' interests, not the other way around. So alongside their transition project once a week, they were looking at mini beasts. So that's what they wanted to learn. I then said, okay, right, well, let's have a look at what this vocabulary is in French. And then I took that away and I created a project, and I chose 4 of these mini beasts to focus on. I think it skipped one. Let's see if I can go backwards. Okay. So with that in mind, I was also wanting to get them ready for school. And I obviously had been doing a lot of French with them through the year and playing a lot of games, and I wanted to focus on instructions and just getting them to understand that concept of listening and perhaps needing to stop what they were doing and be a bit more formal, because that's what's going to happen when they go into sort of school environment. So we were looking at some instructions. So this is a summary of my Mini Beast French transition project. So I took the Mini Beast resource from PowerLanguage, which was far too big and complicated for nursery, so I then adapted it, because it's not designed for nursery, it's designed for slightly older children. I looked at the outdoor and 5 senses resource, which Nadine and myself created last year for early years, which looks at parts of the body and links it to senses and your outdoor environment. I thought, right, what can I do with all of this together? And then I thought, what language have they covered through the year with me in French already? So recycling language. We've done numbers, we've done colours, body parts. I wanted to introduce that anyway. Instructions. Language skills, so bearing in mind, 1 + 2 expectations. I want them to be able to listen to songs and join in with them and follow instructions. I also want to involve our partner school, so I wanted us to share playground games. That was our project anyway, so how can we build that in? And then social skills, things that they were working on within their wider school transition project, and that idea of moving to a bit more formal teaching. So that was the thinking, if you like, behind it. Okay, so I came up with 4 animals. So une araignée, first of all. True nursery style. You've got to have lots of things. These came all the way on the train with me yesterday. So I do a lot of going around charity shops and collecting all sorts of puppets and toys. But I would certainly say in early years, all the way up to I'm working in P3 at the moment, we use a lot of props, if you like, or homemade ones. Obviously this spider only has 6 legs, but you need to put another one in. But things that the children could do in the class. So une araignée, so language. So we talked first about une araignée, and we had a mime. I always introduce things with a mime, so the spider was running up our arm because it's got a r sound in it, so we played a lot with the r, araignée. We counted its legs. We'd already done numbers, so we revised how many legs it had, we talked about what colour it had, and we linked it to the sense of touch, because the spider's crawling up us. So, and we were using our hands, so les mains and toucher. So there were quite a few key words in there. So then I'm thinking, okay, so toucher, what game can we play? Bear in mind that the children were already used to these games, so it wasn't new. So we played Splat. So anybody played Splat? Some people. So flashcards on the wall. 2 children come up, you say the word, and they have to touch it with their hand or with a fly swat, whichever you've got. Okay? They love the fly swats. Just adds a little thing. So toucher. So and they could hear that instruction then. Les mains, avec les mains, toucher. So then we're repeating that, and it's revising the colours or the numbers. And again, that's encouraging turn taking, it's listening. So then we moved on, we talked about what songs do we know with spiders. So we had Incy Wincy Spider, obviously, we all sang that, they knew that. I then introduced them to L'Araignée Gypsy. and I showed them a little animation, a YouTube video clip for that as well. And we had, earlier in the year, we had done weather, so we were able to mime the sun and the rain. And then alongside that, arts and crafts. The children, not in my French session, but in nursery, they were making these spider pictures. So they were already doing that, so it was great. We could talk about what colours we've got on there, count up how many legs, and realise we only knew numbers 1 to 10. And lastly, literacy. So I do a lot of story reading to the children, in taking any book. It doesn't have to be a French book. So this was Our Spider by Lydia Monks, which I'd actually taken out of the library to read to my 2 children, ironically at that sort of time. So we were reading at home and I was like, this is brilliant, we could use this in the class. So I read the book in English and there's a repeated line through it that just goes, ah, look, spider. So all the children are, regardez, une araignée. And they were just joining in. So, I started to say it and then every time it came through, they said it. So we're switching just between English and French. But that's just encouraging them to listen and to use what words that they know. So then we moved on to an abeille. So it had bees, or bzz, buzzing. So again, the literacy, the bzz, une abeille. Miming, revising the colour, black and yellow obviously. And it was something that we were listening to outside. And we started off by talking about what can we hear outside, and the children came up with bees. So that was kind of the nice sort of starting point, looking at what children already know, their prior learning. So then we listened, écouter, we did, and we did les oreilles, So we introduced those words as well. Games, we played the yes-no game, so we were revising numbers. So I had a number up there, and I showed them the 6, c'est 2 ou c'est 6, or a choice of 2, or the yes-no game, I was just saying, c'est toi? Non. C'est 4? Non. C'est 6? Oui. And that's a really nice, simple game, not just in nursery, but all the way through, P1, 2, 3 particularly, because you're doing the work as a teacher, and the children are just, listening and showing their comprehension, and they don't even have to say oui or no, they can just use their thumbs, so that's great. Outdoor learning, we then went outside, and we played Duck, Duck, Goose, outside in English, and we just did it with numbers. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and whoever then got a different number had to run round. And we took a video of that and we sent that to our partner school so that they knew how to play Duck, Duck, Goose. And then we did it in French. So, 1, 2. And all the children were actually chanting, so they were all practicing. And then obviously the child that chose changed the number. And again, student choice, they didn't have to do the more confident ones used their own numbers and chose different numbers. And then the children were saying things like, allez, 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 vite, 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 so using different language. Numeracy, we had soft dice, rolling soft dice, looking at patterns for early years, and counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. We just sat in a circle, we rolled the dice and we counted. Really simple activities. And I teach P1, I've taught P1 through to 7 over the last 4 years, but I find that any of these activities that I do in nursery, I can easily do in P1 to 3, and the children still really enjoy it. So talking about transition and different, using the same teaching approach, these games work as we go up the school. So moving on to une chenille. So we were une chenille like this, doing our mimes. Because children automatically, if we said a caterpillar, the children all got on the floor and were being caterpillars, slithering all around, which was great. We talked about, again, how many legs it has. All these creatures have lots of legs. And we talked about its colour, and we revised toucher because it was, something that you could feel. It feels nice. It's often hairy, and so we talked about les mains. This time with games, we played le sac magique, or pass the parcel type game. So we had all the little mini flashcards for colours. We put them into the bag. The bag went around. Again, the children were touching. They had to touch and choose a card, and then they had to say what that was in the foreign language. Generally, we all say it together because obviously they don't know it. Sometimes they don't even know it in English. So it's like, what is that? We work out what it is in English, and then we work out what it is in French. We couldn't go outside that day because it was pouring with rain. So we brought the parachute inside. So parachute games I really like, especially at this level. And we had plastic coloured balls. You can tell I've got young children. So at home, lots of plastic coloured balls. We put the plastic balls onto the parachute one at a time, different colours, and we just tossed it and we just repeated the word. So bleu. So we said bleu, 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 bleu. And we said it loudly, we said it quietly, we said it slowly, we said it fast. Then we put lots of different balls on and we counted how many there were, and we continued. So it's just a way of getting the children to repeat the words, but in a slightly more interesting way. Oh, literacy. Une chenille on your knee. So talking about rhyming. Obviously here there's rhyming with English and in French rather than within the one language. But I find that the children need something, they need a hook to remember the word. If you just say une chenille is a caterpillar, it's like, there's no way that you're going to remember that. So we were all, making caterpillars crawl on our knees, to help them remember that. And then I just need to say knee, and then they'll, start to remember the word chenille eventually. Un papillon. So un papillon, here we go. It's got a bit crumpled. And there you go, it's a good old nursery. So this was coffee filters and looking at how colours change through coffee filters. So if you put watercolours on it, that one's obviously gone to a horrible colour, but it was beautiful, different colours originally, looking at how colours change. So again, I always try to introduce the vocabulary with something, an arts and crafts activity that the nursery children could do. And the same when I go into the P1 to 3 classes, I always have a visual of some sort, and it helps if it's something that they can then do themselves. So that was un papillon, so that was our mine. So papillon was something that we see, so again we were looking at regarder, and we were looking at les yeux. Revised colours, which was brilliant because the children had done symmetry, they had done these symmetrical paintings already in nursery, so we were able to have a look at it, and I was able to say, well, what colours can you see in here? Trying to get them to revise language they already knew, and starting from what they had done. Games, because it was something that we were looking at, we focused on the Kim's game activity, so that was, with your eyes, so again that was reinforcing the language. So we had regarder, fermer les yeux, ouvrez les yeux, qu'est-ce qui manque? They were already used to those instructions, but we were able to revise them within this context, looking at colours. And again, encourage turn-taking, listening, putting up your hand, which is not something nursery children are particularly good at. Outdoor learning, we went outside, we played butterfly tag. Couldn't really think of, a specific outdoor game. With butterflies, so we just made one up. So they were all butterflies and were running around and then, tagging each other, and then they had to stop, and then when they were tagged, they were able to be a butterfly again. Mm-hmm. So, it was just papillon and aller, stop. Again, getting them to listen to instructions and in context. So, good practice then for following up into P1. So I'm now going into the P1 class to see these pupils. So I'm revising the language in a new context, not starting from the beginning again, because just death by going back to the beginning. So they already know it, so can we do it in a new context? So PowerLanguage has lots of really good resources for early years that Nadine and I have worked on specifically, but there's lots more, but these are specific ones for early years. And so like sea animals is a great one, because it introduces the words for a crab and what else there was? Can't remember, a dolphin and a whale. And they're talking to each other. They're saying, hello, my name is, and how are you? And there are numbers, you can count them, you can say what colour they are. So if children have done that language already, it's just in a new context. If they haven't done it, it's a great way to introduce it. So all those resources, sea animals, space, dinosaurs, all have colours and numbers written within it, and particularly sea animals has the greetings and personal information as well. The outdoor learning of 5 senses is a much bigger topic, looking at body parts, but it's really good looking at instructions with that and activities you can do outside. Consistency, I think it's important to have some consistency in teaching approach, So I'm going into the P1 class and I'm still doing some French with them in exactly the same way that I did in nursery, like a book bug session, which the children really respond to. And I've done that with the P1 and 2 teachers, and the P1 2 teachers have taken that on and do that themselves. And they say that the children like that approach because they know it's French, it's a set structure, they're all used to it, and they know what to expect. And I think children, there's a lot of safety in routine and structure. And the other thing about teaching approach, certainly I really prescribe to a sort of VAK approach when I'm teaching languages, so visual, audio, kinesthetic. I know there's lots more ways that children learn, but I think that that's an umbrella that pretty much encompasses everybody. You know, so we've got une araignée, you know, is our kinesthetic. We've got our visual, you know, and then our audio, we're saying it. And I always try and do that for every single word that we're working with. So the children in nursery last year, to give you an example, learnt numbers that way, 1 to 10, and they all remember their numbers. And in fact, we've gone on to learn 10 to 20 in P1. And we use physical approach. So I'll just show you, because numbers are something conceptual, and I think it's harder to find mimes for them, you know. So we go like this. So, excuse me, we're all monkeys to start with, so Then we're hammering, because 2 sounds like hammering, de. Then we've got twinkling stars, because it's toi, 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 so making that link. Quatre, we're Macaton symbol for a cat, quatre. Cinq, because the boat sank. Six, linking with the s sound for phonics, the s. Set, get set ready for the race. Wheat, with the wheat in the field, there's a lot of wheat in the field, so here we are. And you have to be quite creative. Neuf, we're squeezing the air out of the f sound again, that's a phonics thing, the P1 teacher came up with that. Neuf. And 10, we're so excited we got there that we clap our hands. So, and I just have to mime to the children like this, and the children will say to me, out of order, the children will say toi, you know, cinq. And then that's in nursery or in P1. You know, they've been away all summer, and they still remember that. So then I was teaching them 10 to 20. So I was like, oh, how am I going to do 10 to 20, right? So, onze, what was onze? Onze was we're really tired, we're falling asleep. Onze, you know, making that onze. Douze, we were ghosts. Douze. Treize, treize. Can't quite remember treize.
But they can.
They can. But what was interesting was the children started to come up with the mimes. So cans, I was like, how are we going to remember cans? And the children said, oh, cans of drink. Cans of drink. So I did cans. And 14 was a good one. 14, you know, that links back to cat. And one girl said 14, and she just did a bigger Macaton. So I was like, brilliant, you know. Says, I remember says, and the children were like, well, somebody says something, you know, so we did this. And then 17, 18, 19 were easy. 10, 7, 18, 19, and 20, because it was 2 10s, makes 20. So the children were then starting to see patterns, which is what they've been working on in P1. You know, they've been working on patterns, and then they can start to see linguistic patterns and using the mind to help them. And that was just a revelation to me the other week, how important it is to share. So we had sharing by taking photos and video clips and sending these to our partner school. There isn't time necessary to play the videos, but if we might have a look afterwards if we've got time. We also shared our learning to other children in the different classes, and also invited the parents in. So we did a song. So une abeille. Oh, I forgot the miming. Deux chenilles, trois papillons, quatre araignées. So as soon as there was a mime there, the children, obviously I don't show the words to the children, but I just show the pictures and we do the miming, and you know, they've got it. And that, it could have been shared through an assembly or inviting parents in. Just a couple of things talking about passing information on, the administrative bridge, going back to that idea. I think it's really important that teachers share 2 things. 1, what you've actually covered, and 2, where your learners are at with it, okay? because often we think we've covered something, doesn't mean the learners have actually remembered it or got it, you know. So in Highland we use these I Can Bubbles documents, which we have for early first and second level, and the teacher can colour code by traffic lighting, you know, green, amber and red for what they have or they haven't covered, and pass that on to the next teacher so that they know. And then also we could also do it with the whole class. So do an evaluation with the children. You know, do we know how to say hello? Or, you know, do we remember what bonjour is in what does that mean? And then we can do a class sort of traffic light. You know, roughly where we think the class is at. Obviously, as children get older, at second level, you know, they could each have their own one of these and have a sort of personal learning journey, you know, if you wanted to go down that route. My own learning, things that I would do differently next time, I would actually get out of nursery and go over to main school so that it's more of a transition. So use the playground for the actual activities, extend it to other animals, and then maybe actually do some of the arts and crafts with French instructions so that they're hearing it in another context. I like messy play, so I'd like to do some Play-Doh and maybe celebrate it more by doing a school assembly or get the parents in, which we didn't do. They did it as part of the bigger transition project, but we didn't do anything for the French. These were some questions. We're not going to have time for them now, but obviously these maybe are things for you to think about, or if you're going to go back and do any planning for transition at any stage, these are things that you could look at. Any questions?
Yeah, if you're planning something like this, a programme of resources, are you quite strict with yourself about what language you use at the beginning, the middle and the end? Do you plan all that out? Is this the deal as well? So if you decide to go for nursery, would you say, right, I'm going to aim for these sentences or these verbs? Are you quite strict with yourself, or is it quite organic as you go along?
I'm quite an organic person, a bit of both. I definitely have the vocab, the core vocab, so the mini beasts, une chenille, un papillon, une araignée, une abeille. So those are my 4 words. I then had my 4, you know, toucher, regarder, écouter, les mains, les yeux, les oreilles. I think that was it. So those were that was my core vocab. And that's really what I'm working on. And at nursery level, I'm really working on them understanding those words rather than necessarily, you know, generating them. You know, some of the more confident ones might say it, but not all of them. So, and then I go between French and English. I try and do all my instructions in French. I try and speak in French, but obviously I judge it by where the group's at.
So there is method in the madness, you're saying?
Always method in the madness.
Of course, Thea speaks fluent French, but if you didn't, you could just take, Nadine, you could say, you choose some structures and you stick to these structures. So a teacher who's not a secondary specialist then will be able to use these structures and recycle them. You don't have to...
Definitely having a focus, you know, and making sure that they're very simple, you know, words, you know, that you're working on. And I think that it is important to have that structure, you know.
Any other questions or comments? I mean,
maybe just a comment to bounce back on that, in the fact that in the resources that we developed with Thea, the teachers' notes are quite comprehensive and will really guide teachers as to, you know, in a way they can introduce the vocabulary. Lots of games, as Thea mentioned, and just be flexible with, you know, depending on your context. But the teachers' notes are quite comprehensive for all the sets of levels.
we say nothing. And what is leading the language? What is leading the language?
Where's the phone for a Twitter moment?
The content. You know, and it's even, well, it's important throughout, but with nursery learners, of course, you need a content, a strong content. Otherwise, why am I learning bleu, blanc, rouge if there's no...
And certainly with nursery, you've got to make sure they've got the English hook, because if they haven't got it in English, you can't hook onto it, you know. So I think that's really important to make sure that they understand it first in their mother tongue, you know. Looking at your Post-its, I know I'm running completely out of time here, but looking at your Post-it notes, the things that you had mentioned, do you think that some of those were included in that project?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're all totally capable of planning a nursery transition project.